Well, I do have just a few thoughts, and they are unillustrated, I'm sorry to say. And they are a few thoughts that are occasioned by the challenge of painting a 15-minute picture of physical planning, which is an exceedingly broad canvas. There was an American humorist, Robert Benchley, who said that the world is made up of two kinds of people: those who classify people into two kinds and those who do not. And planning is often classified into two kinds. There's physical planning and there's social planning. Physical planning has to do with houses and streets and sewers. Social planning has to do with jobs and health and education. It may be orderly to think of such classifications as we think of the orderliness of animal, vegetable, and mineral. And it's useful when we look to specialists who tend to be skilled in dealing with natural resources, or with environmental design, or with human development. And there's one aspect of human development that I think I would be much more prudent to yield to, particularly with the light coming into my eye. I'd better accept my own species of development and put my glasses on. Planners are peculiar people. We resist capture by a specialized interest. We concentrate on the interrelationships between actions. We live in the boundary zones where human concerns overlap and compete. On any particular problem that we may turn to, there are specialists who know much more than we do. Special competence that may be gained at the cost of slighting competing human needs, just as the planner must pay a cost in the skeptical slighting of a specialist's prescriptions when he tries to balance competing needs. We do continue to talk a good deal in the United States about physical planning and social planning, and we continue to make a separation between the two. Our own research staff recently prepared a memorandum for subscribers to our planning advisory service that directs them to documents on social planning and to planners in specific agencies who are called social planners. The memorandum says, no attempt will be made to define social planning. The persons who call themselves social planners and who are listed in this issue are interested in a broad range of topics: social policy development, social impact analysis, citizen participation, social welfare, human resources planning, and social services planning, such as health, criminal justice, transportation, manpower, community development, and poverty planning. What I'm trying to persuade you to do is to think of physical and social planning in a particular way, even though I have not yet managed to persuade my own staff to do so as yet. That is, to think of physical planning as a branch of social planning rather than as a separate kind. The objective of any planning is happier living in consequence of choosing one action rather than another. Some planning is for the development of human capacities through education, job training, cultural development. Some planning is for the management of land or water, the design of buildings or roads. All of it is social planning. All of it requires the participation of people, requires the discovery of the needs of people, the invention of answers to people's problems, their choices among possible answers, and inspection of the results to see whether the answers are making things better or making things worse. Now, this would be no more than a game of words if choosing an approach to physical planning didn't have practical consequences. It does. Let me illustrate. Many of our planning choices, for example, are expressed in budgets that govern public expenditures. The practice of dividing planning into physical and social is commonly mirrored in our budgets that are divided into capital expenditures and operating expenditures. Care is taken to have things fall in the right places. Is the automobile an operating expense because it moves and you replace them each year? Or is it a capital expense because it can be maintained for many years and costs a lot? Is the work on the building rehabilitation and capital, or is it maintenance and operating? I think it may be helpful to forget making distinctions of that sort. The money ultimately comes from the same place. A capital expenditure creates an obligation to provide operating expenditures. Here's a playground in the physical plan and the capital budget. There is a playground director in the social plan and operating budget. But there's only one social objective here, that of helping young people to do their job of being children. A united plan with a united budget makes it possible to work more efficiently toward that objective. The playground becomes one piece of equipment to be used, designed, built, rebuilt, torn apart, in whatever ways the play people decide. Let's say there's another capital expenditure, part of a regional physical plan for a dam to control flooding, and there's an operating fund plan to pay for the disaster relief of flood victims. Planned separately, the dam encourages further settling and building in the floodplain, and a greater need someday for disaster relief. Planned together, the objective may be reached by keeping settlement out of the floodplain. To illustrate a second practical consequence, I think of the fame now achieved in the United States by environmental impact statements. These are the statements required by law that evaluate the environmental effects of proposed projects and developments. What effect will there be on the cleanliness of air and water? What effect will there be on wildlife of a marsh or on a wild river? Will an alternative design be harmful? Such impact statements have themselves had a marked impact on slowing or stopping or redesigning projects that would be damaging to the environment. Their power has been sufficient to invite the establishment of other kinds of impact statement. Those who would have an economic gain in development suggest the need for an economic impact statement. How many jobs will be lost? Those who fear higher taxes to serve new development ask for a fiscal impact statement. How much revenue will it bring? And how much public expenditure will it take? Those who are concerned with equity, fairness, and just distribution ask for a social impact statement. What will it do to the gap between the poor and the well-off? Will access to benefits be properly shared? The motive of many proposers who want other kinds of impact statement is to slow up the momentum of environmental impact statements that are seen as too powerful a tool favoring competing interests, and public policy must continually balance them with each other. But that balancing is a main business of a plan and can be better done if the interrelated character of economic, physical, and social is addressed right away and not with segregated impact statements, nor with separate physical plans and social plans. Another of the main uses of a plan illustrates a third consequence. That's the use of a plan to coordinate developmental activities. Looking at the physical plan as a separate thing, we find ourselves coordinating the streets with the houses, and the houses with the schools, and the schools with the parks, and the parks with the sewers, and the sewers with the industry, and the industry with the streets. And looking at a social plan as a separate thing, that we are coordinating job training with personnel needs, with health programs, with nursery services, with financial assistance, with criminal justice reforms, with cultural development, with education, and with job training. Allowing two such sets to develop separately before they are coordinated with each other is like trying to reunite two dialects that have evolved separately for some centuries. And sometimes it seems to me it's like trying to reunite two languages. The two sets must be one set if we really want to build to serve the way we want to live. Our planning traditions in the United States should help us in uniting the physical and the social from the earliest establishment of our planning schools. Even though they were located in schools of architecture, the practice was adopted of admitting students whose previous work was in sociology or economics or political science. Actually, students whose previous work had been in any field. This was often seen as a curiosity in our universities. Civil engineers wanted to know how much extra study would be needed for the social science people to help them catch up. Sociologists wanted to know how much extra study would be needed for the engineers to help them catch up. As our planning training evolved in the 40s and 50s, the social science students seemed to be absorbed into an emphasis on physical planning, particularly on land use problems. In the 60s, planning students thought this emphasis not relevant to pressing social problems and moved away from land use and physical development. And now there's a rediscovery of land use issues as a meeting place for dealing with many of the problems of health and equity and social well-being. The meeting ground today is the ground. And I see this as the necessary attitude for physical planning, that it be pursued as a branch of social planning. And it may be possible for us to unite on this point without having to label it as a correct view. In the pluralistic world that I value, I shun arriving at views that are finally correct. An American historian once said that there are two kinds of people in the world, good people and bad people. And he said, it's always the good people who do the classifying. Thank you.
Thank you.